There are moments that don't announce themselves. No sound, no warning, no obvious sign that something is wrong. Just a feeling, a quiet, low pressure behind your eyes, a stillness in your chest that arrives before your brain can catch up and explain it. A voice somewhere underneath your thoughts that says, something here is not right. Most people ignore it. They tell themselves it's nerves, overthinking, anxiety, and most of the time they're probably correct. But sometimes they're not. These are 3 real accounts from people who felt it first, before anything happened, before they had any reason to. The situation just felt wrong, the way a room feels wrong before you realize what's missing from it. They all wished they had listened sooner. The first account comes from a woman named Raina. She was 29 at the time. She lived alone in a mid-sized city in Ohio, worked as a paralegal, and described herself as someone who trusted her gut most of the time. She told me the night started like any other Thursday. She got home from work around 6:30, changed clothes, ordered Thai food, and settled in for the rest of the evening. Her apartment was on the 4th floor of a newer building, secure entrance, fob key required to access the elevator and stairwell. She had always felt safe there. The food arrived around 7:15. She brought it inside, sat on the couch, and turned on something she'd been watching. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. She told me the feeling started while she was eating. Not a sound, not a movement, just a feeling. A low, spreading unease that she noticed the way you notice a smell you can't identify. It was just there, underneath everything else, quiet and persistent. She looked around the apartment, living room, kitchen, hallway, everything exactly where it should be. She told herself it was nothing, ate the rest of her food, watched TV. The feeling didn't leave. Around 9 o'clock, she got up to refill her water glass. She walked into the kitchen, ran the tap, and stood there for a moment looking at the window above the sink. Her kitchen window faced the interior courtyard of the building. Ground floor below, sky above, other apartment windows on all 4 sides. She had never thought much about it. She was on the 4th floor, no one could see in. But that night, she told me she had the distinct and irrational sense that someone was looking at her from outside that window. She pulled the blinds, went back to the couch, told herself to stop. She turned the TV up. At 10:40, she went to get ready for bed. She brushed her teeth, washed her face, and when she walked out of the bathroom, she stopped. She didn't know why. She just stopped in the hallway and stood there, and then she heard it, a sound from inside her bedroom. Not a crash, not a voice. More like the soft resistance of a door hinge moving slowly, as if the closet door, which she always kept half open, had shifted slightly. She stood in the hallway for a long moment. She told me every reasonable part of her brain was already reaching for an explanation. Air pressure change from the bathroom, the building settling, the HVAC cycling on and pushing air through the vent near the closet floor. All of those things were possible, but the feeling that had been sitting in her chest since dinner, it got heavier. She did not go into the bedroom. She went back to the living room, sat on the couch, and picked up her phone. She texted her sister. She didn't say she was scared. She just said, "Hey, still awake?" and waited. Her sister answered after a few minutes. "Yeah, what's up?" Raina said she didn't know. She just said she had a weird feeling she couldn't shake. Her sister asked if she wanted to come over. Raina told me she almost said no. Almost. But the feeling in her chest said yes. She grabbed her keys, her phone, her bag, and walked out of the apartment. She didn't look back at the bedroom doorway as she left. She spent the night at her sister's. In the morning, she came back to the apartment. She walked in, looked around. Everything seemed fine. She went into the bedroom. The closet was open a few inches more than she had left it. She told herself maybe she was wrong about where she had left it. Maybe she misremembered. But she went through the closet, through every inch of it. And at the very back, on the floor behind the hanging clothes, she found a water bottle. It was not hers. She had never owned a water bottle like that. Black, reusable, with a small dent in the side. She had no memory of it being there. None of her friends had been in the apartment recently. She lived alone. She called the building manager. The building manager called the police. The police came. They took the water bottle. They checked the building's access logs. No unauthorized badge access to the elevator or stairwell. No broken locks. No forced entry anywhere in the building. But on the exterior of the building, in the courtyard directly below her kitchen window, someone had used the drainage pipe brackets on the building's corner column to climb. The scuff marks on the brackets were fresh. Her window had been unlocked. She had never thought to lock it. It was 4 floors up. She moved out of that apartment within 3 weeks. The investigation is still open. She told me one last thing before we finished talking. She said, the feeling started 3 hours before I found the bottle. 3 hours before I had any reason to feel anything. She said she doesn't know what that means, but she listens to it now, every single time. The second account came from a man named Dominic. He was 34 when it happened. He worked in logistics and spent a lot of time on the road, which meant a lot of time in unfamiliar hotels, motels, and roadside places. He told me he was generally comfortable being alone in new places. It came with the job. This was different. He had pulled off the highway around midnight after a 12-hour day. He needed sleep before the last leg of his drive in the morning. The motel he stopped at was one of those small, independent places, about 20 rooms in an L shape around a parking lot. Single exterior corridor, rooms with exterior-facing doors. He had stayed in dozens of places like it. He checked in at the front desk. The man working the desk was polite enough, gave him a key card for room 9. End of the building, ground floor, quieter, he said. Dominic thanked him, took the card, drove around to the back of the L where room 9 was, and parked directly in front of it. He told me the feeling started before he even got out of the car. He sat there with the engine off and the parking lot light buzzing overhead, and something about the situation made him not want to get out. Not fear exactly, not anything he could point to, just a heaviness, a reluctance his body felt before his mind understood it. He looked around the lot. 3 other cars parked, 2 near the front office, one about 5 spaces down from him. He watched that car for a moment, no one inside, interior dark. An older model sedan, dark blue or black, hard to tell in the lot light. He got out, grabbed his bag, unlocked room 9 and went inside. The room was ordinary. Standard bed, small desk, bathroom, TV on the dresser. The kind of room that exists in 300,000 motels across the country. He had been in rooms exactly like it more times than he could count. He dropped his bag, sat on the edge of the bed. The feeling was still there. He turned on the TV just to have sound, went to the bathroom, came back, lay down on top of the covers without taking his shoes off. He told me he did that sometimes when he felt uneasy somewhere, staying dressed, staying ready, not fully surrendering to the place, just in case. Around 1 in the morning, he heard something from outside, a car door, not slamming, just closing. The soft, deliberate click of a door being pulled shut quietly. He didn't get up. He lay there and listened. Footsteps on the exterior walkway, slow, unhurried steps, moving along the corridor toward his room. He told me he tracked them by sound. They passed room 12, past 11, past 10. They stopped outside room 9. He lay completely still. Nothing happened for a long moment. No knock, no sound of a key card, just stillness. Then the footsteps moved again, back the way they came. Past 10, past 11, getting quieter. He got up, went to the window, moved the curtain a half-inch. The man from the front desk was walking back toward the office, slowly, hands in his pockets, not looking back. Dominic told me he stood there for a long time trying to figure out if that was unusual. Maybe the desk clerk made rounds. Maybe he checked on doors. Maybe it was completely standard practice that Dominic had just never noticed before. He went back to the bed. He couldn't sleep. At 2:40, he heard something different. From the room directly next to his, room 8, a voice, low, male, speaking in a steady, unhurried tone, like someone on a phone call. He couldn't make out words through the wall, just the cadence, calm, conversational. He hadn't heard anyone check into room 8. The parking lot outside his window only had the one sedan and his truck. He would have heard another car. He pressed his ear very lightly to the shared wall. The voice on the other side stopped. Total silence. Like whoever was speaking had heard him move and stopped. He stepped back. He picked up his bag. He checked that his keys were in his hand. He went to the door and stood there for a moment, looking through the peephole. The walkway outside was empty. The parking lot light buzzed. He opened the door, walked directly to his truck, put his bag in, got in, locked the doors. He drove for 2 hours without stopping, until he found a large chain hotel off a highway interchange, a place with a staffed lobby visible through glass doors and security cameras mounted clearly at the entrance. He checked in. He slept. In the morning, he thought about calling the original motel. He thought about what he would even say. I heard a voice through the wall and I left. I heard footsteps and I left. Nothing happened to me. Nothing was done to me. He didn't call. But he told me he went back 2 weeks later. not to stay, just to drive through the lot. The motel looked the same, but the sedan that had been parked 5 spaces from his truck that night was still there, same spot. 2 weeks later, he took a photo of the plates and sent them to his cousin who works in law enforcement. His cousin called him back 4 days later. The car had been reported stolen 3 months prior from a rest stop 4 hours north. The rest stop where a woman had reported being followed to her car and barely gotten away. Dominic didn't know if any of it was connected. He still doesn't. He just told me that the feeling he had in that parking lot before he even got out of his truck was the same feeling he's had twice since then in other situations. He said both times he listened. Both times something was wrong. He said he doesn't question it anymore. He just gets back in the truck. The third account is the one that took me the longest to write down. Not because it was the most dramatic. In some ways, it's the quietest of the 3, but it's the one I keep coming back to. It came from a woman named Petra. She was 51 years old. She had worked as a school administrator for over 2 decades. She was methodical, practical, the kind of person who color-coded her calendar and had an emergency contact list laminated to the inside of every cabinet in her house. She told me the situation happened on an ordinary Saturday afternoon in late autumn. She was at a grocery store, a large one, the kind with wide fluorescent aisles and a bakery and a pharmacy in the back, a store she had been going to for 9 years. She knew the layout the way she knew her own hallway. She had a list. She was moving through it methodically, the way she did everything. She told me she noticed the man in the cereal aisle, not because he did anything, not because he looked a particular way, just she noticed him the way you sometimes notice something without knowing why your eyes went there. He was standing near the end of the aisle looking at his phone. She walked past him, got her cereal, moved on. She saw him again in the bread section. Same posture, phone in hand, not looking at her, just present. She told herself it was a coincidence. The store was busy enough. People moved through the same sections. She kept going. She saw him again by the deli counter. She told me it was the 3rd time that something in her chest shifted. That quiet pressure. Not alarm. Nothing as sharp as alarm. More like the feeling you get when you can't remember if you turned the stove off. That low, spreading awareness that something requires your attention. She paid attention. She changed her route. Instead of going to the frozen section next, which was where her list took her, she went to the back corner of the store near the pharmacy, an area she didn't need anything from. She stood there for 90 seconds, pretending to look at vitamins. The man did not appear. She relaxed slightly, finished the vitamins section, turned back toward frozen foods. He was standing at the end of the aisle she had just come from, still looking at his phone. She told me she made a decision then, not a dramatic one, not a panicked one. She simply decided to finish shopping as fast as possible, go directly to the checkout, and leave. She moved quickly, got the last few things, got in the shortest checkout line. She was loading items onto the belt when she looked up. He was in the line next to hers. No groceries. He was standing in the line with no groceries. She told me she looked at his hands. No basket, no items, nothing. He was looking at his phone. She paid without making eye contact. She gathered her bags. She walked toward the exit. And she did something she told me she'd never done before. She didn't go to the parking lot. The store had a small coffee kiosk just inside the exit doors. She walked to it. She stood in the line. She ordered a coffee she didn't want. And she stood there, facing the exit doors, watching the parking lot through the glass. She waited. She saw him come through the exit about 2 minutes later. He walked into the parking lot. He stopped. He looked left. He looked right. He was looking for her car. She could tell. She said she could tell the way you can tell when someone is searching for something specific and hasn't found it yet. He was scanning, not walking. Not going to a car, just scanning the lot. He stood there for a moment. Then he took out his phone and made a call. She could not hear what he said. He waited, listened, then walked to a white pickup truck near the back of the lot and got in. He did not drive away immediately. He sat there. She asked the woman at the coffee kiosk if there was another exit from the store. There was. A side door near the pharmacy, which led out onto a different section of the lot. She went out that way, found her car, drove out a different exit than she usually used, and took 3 different turns before getting onto the main road, watching her mirrors every time. The white pickup did not follow her. She drove to a gas station 4 blocks from her house, sat in the lot for 10 minutes, Then she drove home. She told no one for 2 weeks, not because she didn't trust anyone, but because she kept asking herself if she had overreacted, if the man was just a distracted shopper who happened to move through the same sections she did, if there was no cart because he'd left it somewhere, if he'd been looking for a friend's car, or any car, for entirely ordinary reasons. She told me she still doesn't know for certain, but she said this. She said she has been going to that grocery store for 9 years, every week, and she has never once felt that specific pressure in her chest in that building. Not once. And then one afternoon she felt it, and followed it without being able to name it. And the thing it led her to see was a man standing in a checkout line with nothing in his hands. She said, "I didn't know what he wanted. I still don't know what he wanted. But I know that the feeling started before I had any reason to have it. And the feeling was right." She said she thinks about the women who don't get the feeling, or who get it and talk themselves out of it. She thinks about them a lot. She changed which grocery store she goes to. Different chain, different part of town. She hasn't seen the man again. But she pays attention now in a way she says she didn't used to. She watches checkout lines for people with no groceries. She exits through doors she doesn't usually use. She sits in parking lots before she drives home. She said it makes her feel foolish sometimes. Overly careful, like she's carrying a fear she was never meant to carry. But she said it's better than the alternative. She said that once you know the feeling is real, you can't pretend you don't feel it anymore. 3 people, 3 ordinary places, 3 moments where nothing had happened yet, and yet something was already wrong. None of them can fully explain how they knew, and that's the part I find hardest to let go of. We talk about instinct like it's a relic, something left over from a time when the world was more dangerous, before locks and streetlights and phones with emergency buttons. We talk about it like it's noise, static, something to be filtered out in favor of rational thought. But rational thought works forward. It starts with evidence and moves toward conclusion. Whatever Raina felt in her apartment that Thursday evening, whatever Dominic felt sitting in a dark parking lot before he even opened his truck door, whatever Petra felt in the cereal aisle of a store she had been visiting for 9 years, that worked the other way. It started at the conclusion, and then it waited for the evidence to catch up. They listened. Most people don't. Most people override it with logic and go back to bed, or get out of the truck, or walk to their car through the parking lot the same way they always do. And most of the time, nothing happens. But some of the time, something does. I don't know what was in Raina's closet. I don't know who was speaking through the wall in room 8. I don't know what the man in the grocery store wanted. But I think about them all. When a room feels slightly wrong before I can say why. When I stop outside a door and can't explain why I'm stopping. When something in my chest goes quiet and careful and says, "Not yet." Pay attention. Just for a moment, pay attention.